the success of Secretary Clinton has been predicated on the promise that she will be a third term of President Obama. Now, we've heard two panels of experts give us clear indication that the Obama administration has in fact been at minimum, accommodating to the interests of the regime in Iran. So what I'm going to try to do in my remarks is to say that in my 68 years on this earth, I've seen 3 human rights movements that I've been able to engage in. The American Civil Rights Movement in my teenage years, working in the South and in the North alike, I was able to watch both Democrats and Republicans reach a consensus as to what was right and to give amplification to the voices for change, voices that challenged the status quo. I was privileged to be tutored in diplomacy by Max Kappelman and Morris Abram, and worked in the former Soviet Union as these two Democrats working in a Republican administration tried to give amplification to voices inside the Soviet Union and outside the Soviet Union to the plight of those who were oppressed in the Soviet Union. I watched America reach a consensus that the apartheid system in South Africa had to end. I was able to experience 2 different approaches: constructive engagement and a very, very aggressive campaign for divestment in South Africa. But there was a consensus of opinion and direction in America that we, in fact, must be on the side of the victims of apartheid. And even though the approaches were different, both Republicans and Democrats were committed to bringing apartheid to its knees. I would suggest to you that in the case of Iran, as we've heard from expert after expert, the same pattern of human rights abuses, the same pattern of oppressing religious minorities, the same patterns and practices of exploiting terrorism are still in place. The question for us is whether or not we will embrace disruptors to that status quo in Iran, or if we will play patty cake with that regime. I would suggest to you that it's going to take the same sort of bipartisanship and consensus building and resolve to win in our struggle against that regime. As you know from previous presentations, I can go into a sermon. I won't do that, but the Bible as literature is interesting. There is a notion put forth that those who would do evil love the darkness. But we're also told that those of us who are impregnated with human dignity have a light to shine. And the question is, will we put that light under a bushel, or will we raise it high and illuminate and give substance to human dignity? I would suggest to you that there are too many people who are busy putting out lights. Lamp lighters, candle lighters, or non-governmental organizations across this globe, folks who are challenging the status quo and the practices of the regime in Iran, folks who have not turned a blind eye to the oppression of dissidents, the oppression of religious minorities, and the gross oppression of women in that regime, or by that regime. So I think it's simple. We, in fact, have to have a foreign policy that uses modern technology, leverages dwindling resources in such a way that we give amplification to those voices inside and outside. The energy from outside is coming from the diaspora of Iranians who actually know what's going on the inside because they have experienced it. There is no excuse for us to have turned over the legacy and the continuance of Camp Liberty to the United Nations. The money is there. That bureaucracy is fickle by two things: corruption and a gross, log-rolling, back-scratching system where you have many countries on the jury that should be in the dock, protecting, foot-dragging, while those dissidents, those religious minorities, and those women are abused and oppressed. Now is not the time for us to hide our candles. Now is not the time for us to get into petty partisanship. Now is the time for those of us who understand the darkness of our time and the darkness in Iran to light candles and together to rush the darkness and punch holes in the darkness and give light to liberty and individual dignity. I'll close by quoting Martin Luther King, who said in a speech at Lincoln University in 1961 that we are all heirs to the worthiness of dignity, or to the dignity of worthiness. I would suggest to you that that is quintessential what the Universal Declaration of Human Rights is about. It doesn't pick and choose. It doesn't engage in relativism. It says that each one of us on this planet is, in fact, obligated to recognize the dignity of others and to have our human dignity recognized. We have an agenda. Let's spend our time figuring out how to light candles and build and expand unity and not get bogged down into petty politics, or blacks would still be second-class citizens. Soviet Jews would still, in some shape, form, or fashion, be less than full citizens. And apartheid would still exist. We, in fact, must build the coalition, the bipartisan and universal coalition, to fight a regime that has outlived its time. Thank you.